Welcome everyone to Still Here, the Cosmology of Black Resilience. My name is Ebony Iman, and I'm with African Nation Artists Organization.
And my name is Marie Casimir, and I'm with Jasper Productions. As for the virtual exhibition from wherever you are, in Oklahoma, in the United States, in the world, to be able to share this with you, this has been out, it's finally here, and we can share it.
It is finally here. Thank you all again for joining us. We have artwork from 7 artists, Suzanne Thomas, Amena Butler, and also Pasley, Ronna Pernell, Musah Swallah, myself, and on the performing artist side?
Sure. On the performing artist side, we have Jermaine Griffith, who is working with me on a dance. So myself, we have Grace Franklin, Anthony Brinkley, Gabe Paisley doubles as a performer. We also have Catherine John, and we have a dance performance by Changing Frequencies and her family that you will see later as part of the virtual opening.
Yeah, so we are super grateful for all of the artists that decided to participate. This show is about resilience, it's about storytelling. We are sharing the perspective, from the perspective of the artists, what it's like to be Black in this great world that we live in.
I know. So one of the questions that was important to us that we asked the maker, as well as you, the audience, the viewer, what does it mean to be Black and resilient, right? And that might mean different things for different people, but to contemplate, what does resilience actually mean? And after 2020, and so we started planning this in the summer of 2020, in the heat of 2020, during the midst of uprisings and protests, and as well as pandemic, right? We were trying to keep ourselves safe, and we also wanted to keep our community safe. And we, as artists, this is how we express,
process.
Yeah. And so we thought, let's come together and share not only Black trauma, because we were seeing so much of that on the news, and then also, what we personally have experienced in our lives. It felt really important to show the range of experiences, and the range of experiences includes, for us, resilience.
Exactly. And so once you walk through the gallery space, once you experience the art, the performances that you will experience, you'll see a theme. You'll see a theme that's about, yes, we go through things, but it's also about coming out on the other side stronger. And so thank you so much. We are so appreciative.
Something we haven't addressed? There's a lot of women in this show.
There are.
It's majority Black women. And thank you, Musah, for being our Black man.
And our poet,
Anthony Brinkley. Yeah. But I do want to say a lot of the perspective is coming from Black women, and I think maybe that just happened naturally. But as 2 Black women who are who go through it, right? But also, we try to heal each other. And so I feel like this has
been a sisterhood thing, but we need the brothers too. So
exactly.
But we all so much just for being there, and and Marie and I, we've definitely had a great time working together and trying to get everything together. And thanks for all the artists that said yes. Now we will have a couple of future events as well. In addition to this virtual exhibition, we have an event on the 13th. It's called Storytelling in the Park. So Anthony Brinkley is coming all the way up from Tulsa to share his experiences through storytelling. And we also have Grace Franklin.
Sure, Grace Franklin is working on a couple of poems that she will share, and I believe there might be some movement incorporated as well. And Gabe Paisley is reading from a forthcoming book that she's working on. Ebony has a forthcoming book that she's working on. And Catherine John has some essays that she has written. And so we hope you'll be able to come out and join us in the gardens. And again, just experience the multitude of different ways, of different styles of Black art.
Yeah, so now we're presenting Changing Frequencies.
Oh, right, that's coming up. Okay, up next.
Enjoy.
name is Suzanne Thomas. I am an artist here in Oklahoma City. I'm a painter. That's my education is in painting. So why I started doing the embroidery is I had you have to be in your studio to paint, but which is fine. But I find that if I started doing embroidery, I could just sit in my. I can take my embroidery and sit in the living room and watch TV and be with my family and be with my husband and talk to them, and you know what I'm saying, the cleanup is not nearly as whatever. So that's one of the other reasons I started doing the embroidery. I mean, I still paint. I still do painting, and I combine the two a lot. The two, I do try to mirror the two. So that's the other reason for the layering for the tool, is that I can paint and then put something on top so that it all works together. My grandmother, my father's mother, my paternal grandmother, had a lot of this stuff, like doilies and lace and quilt blocks that she worked. She was really handsy, and she was a seamstress and all of that business. So these items to me are linens. I like working with fine, delicate linens and things like that because I don't know, it's a delicacy, it's delicate, it's, of a better term, feminine, I guess. These were items that I remember at my grandmother's house, at my aunt's house, my great aunt's house, and they would just, there were things that you just laid on the back of your sofa or your chair or on your table. And like I said, these were people who didn't have a whole lot, I mean, what is now Bricktown is where my grandmother lived, for heaven's sakes. I mean, I remember going to her house after church and going for dinner, and so, but she had these items, and she took very good care. What little bit she had, she took very good care of. She was a seamstress, and I mean, that's, she did a lot of different jobs, but one of her jobs was sewing. I feel like all of this comes from my grandmother, my father's mother. Loved my mother's mother, I'm not saying, but yeah, that just because she encouraged me and she would show me how to do things and stuff like that. As I have gotten older, I'm seeing certain characteristics and thoughts and ideas that definitely I can go, oh yeah, that's my grandmother, that's my mother, that's my father. And I think it's just a tangible way of holding on to them. It's weird to look at yourself and see everybody else, but you still are you. I mean, even my hands and my legs, they're my mother. This is my grandmother and my father, but and the hips is, everybody and everything else. But when you look, you've thought of yourself for so long as an individual, and I think as we get older, somewhere along the line you realize you are the sum parts of everybody who came before you. And that's, I mean, yes, you're uniquely you, but you're really just a big mixture of all those other people, even not just physically, but also, intellectually, I think emotionally, spiritually. My work is definitely about Black women. My images are all Black females. And that was a conscious choice. Well, I shouldn't say a conscious choice. It really wasn't a conscious choice. It's like, who else am I going to paint? I am Black. Well, some people I've had, 20, 30 plus years ago, someone said, why do you paint Black women? I said, well, why wouldn't I? I said, I am Black. And I said, well, how about this? White women don't need me to paint them. No. They don't. I'm not saying I can't. I'm not saying I shouldn't. I just say they don't need me to. My work is personal to a certain degree. It's not narrative. It is, my experiences. I mean, art is ultimately communication, right? So that's my experience. So I always tap into that past. I don't necessarily do familiar portraits, but I do look at vintage work and vintage art of Black women. That started years ago. I considered it comes out of a series I called Fearfully Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, which is, I cannot remember the biblical verse it comes from at this moment, but it's a biblical verse, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And it was images of Black women. And I started with like vintage, Victorian age, but I definitely was looking more at like Lena Horne, Eartha Kitt, Dorothy Dandridge. And the reason why I said is because I was looking at that glamour history, that Black women have always been beautiful. Have always been beautiful. We've always been beautiful. We now know everyone knows we're beautiful, but we've always been beautiful. We've always been gorgeous. I want young people to realize there's a history of us being beautiful and glamorous and whatever, that didn't start in let me date myself. No, don't let me date myself. I think of Pam Grier. That didn't start with Pam Grier in the 70s, or Halle Berry. No, it didn't start with them. It actually, there's a long line that really goes way back. So that's why I started, and so that's where I have that connection and all of that. Lady Sarah is vintage. She's a turn of the century. She's Victorian, but she lived a very privileged life. So I just said, I think I'll just do a stitch. I just think she's gorgeous. And so that's where that kind of comes, this Victorian. I did a lot of Victorian images in other works that I've done. This is a great show. I like the variety. I like the different images. I like how everyone is saying, everyone's on the same page, but we're all saying it in a different way. Everyone has a story. Everybody has something to say, and that's okay. I think that's great. The other part of it is we all seem very happy about who we are. Does that make sense? We are happy about who we are and what we represent. That's the other part of this. I see people like going, we're happy. Yeah. We're okay with it. We're very grounded in it. So that's what I see. Yeah. Look at us. We are so wonderful and various. There's so much about us. You have just scratched the surface. You have no idea.
The name of the exhibition.
Resilient. Still here. You have no idea. You think this is all of it? Oh, please. There's just so much more.
I'm Ronna Pernell, artist from Oklahoma City, native. Been doing art since I was technically 7, but professionally since 2006. And just been working with different artists with the art community, trying to do my expression as far as the Black woman telling our story, trying to tell it from a positive input, because I think that we as Black women have been shown as a negative light. So I just want to tell the resilience and the beauty that we provide with the Black culture, and how nurturing we are, and how loving we are, and how inspiring that we can be, how bright we can bring the communities together, people together. I just think it's undertoned, but not told enough, of what strength that we give people, and that's part of self-expression, and that us as Black women don't know how to love ourselves. So I try to reach to that, they say Black girl magic. So I went through just my latest works, the past 5 years have been like a form of expression of sisterhood, because whenever you're down, you are able to lean on your close friend I usually call people my close sisters, because sometimes you have to make your own family, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And those can help bring you through the dark times. And as far as me with my art, I feel that it's trying to tell the story of how we pick ourselves up, how we can embrace each other, show love, to all us as humans, besides just Black women, I just think our story is not told often enough. This piece is called Echoes. So the story behind it at the time, which was maybe about a year ago, so realizing my present self, my spiritual self, and your oversoul. So it's like you are watching over you. You can project what future you want for yourself. So I feel that painting it may bring it to me, or bring that, or heal that what needs to be healed, you know. Because us as Black women, we've been torn down with the slavery, raising people's babies, and then we trying to find our own self, trying to raise our own families, dealing with our own struggles with relationships, men. You know, I dealt with my struggles with relationships, raising 2 kids, just different scenarios, just saying that we all have our own story, but it's the same. But if you believe in love, like y'all just don't know the dark days that I've been through. But I feel that, I'm sorry, I don't want to cry, but I feel that showing love can help you get through it, connecting with family. But I have some real close friends that help me through my dark times, or that I can confide in, and I just want to celebrate us, the beauty in us as women, Black women, really relating to Black women, because that's what I look like. That's me. Just the whole part of the name of the exhibition, Black Resilience, and I just want to show that we are resilient, that we can tell our story, even though we may have had a struggle. Just look for the light of where the unity, like our dark times of what we've been going through now. And then the other piece that I created was the Black Goddess, and the idea was to see the Black Goddess within you, as far as to self-love yourself. Just figuring out your own therapy, or going to a therapist. I did go to a therapist, y'all.
Yeah.
So
Shout out to therapists, love mine.
I know, I love mine.
Yeah.
But
I feel like Black women, I feel like we're all having a moment where we are talking to therapists.
Well, I think society has made it to whereas they look at us as the strong woman, but we're the torn down woman, also in the same breath. But us as, like me connecting with you, Ebony, y'all just don't know where I was at the time that I even met Ebony. I was even trying to find myself as an artist, or I saw somebody that looked like me. That was an artist, like I was telling you yesterday. And I didn't think it was here in Oklahoma. But I just figured I just wanted to embrace us. I wanted to learn the art business by myself. I didn't want no help, because I wanted to learn like the business part, how to brand myself, plus create. So like in my mental mind, there was a process of how I do. I create the content, do the business part, then promote.
Sure.
But if anybody asks like how to do, that's the part as an artist, like most people, they create, but they don't know how to network or think of the business part, or how you gonna sustain yourself. It was started in high school. I took a commercial art class, and this art teacher, I will remember her name always, Judy McGee. And I did a piece. I was pregnant, 1983. That's my daughter's age. Matter of fact, she was in the belly. So, but at the time I did, piece was called Memories of a Lazy Day. Don't know, I saw somebody in class kind of do it, and so I was kind of doing it. But the piece was huge for my first piece as a teenager, pregnant, hot, July. So I called it Memories of the Lazy Day. So I painted this guy, male, sitting on a bench with his feet barefoot, because I couldn't wear shoes at the time because I was pregnant. But that piece actually hung in the governor's mansion. at the time. My parents didn't encourage art. They didn't see no future in art. Like, how is that gonna pay for something? That ain't gonna pay no bills. So in the Black home, they never really encouraged the creative side. Even though my mom sewed, she was like Suzanne, was a seamstress, but she never encouraged that part of me. Then I got pregnant, and then that's the other story. So, but I had left the art world for a while. I was really good with developing, and then I got pregnant, raising kids, and then I came back to it, back in 1999, and then from there on, I tried to keep pushing, doing random pieces. Didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out, watching other people, learning, books, studying, taking workshops. Flew all the way to California for this one little shop. You know, just sometimes you just gotta jump.
Yeah.
These particular pieces is really a challenge for me because this is like my second and third art piece of color. And then plus I went, bigger go home, bigger go home. So, which was a challenge, learning how to blend, but I felt that oils worked it better for me because they blend better. As an artist, you know how you get stuck in one little thing, but you want to grow? So I wanted to level up, evolve as an artist, experiment, I didn't want to be in one lane. Thank God, I'm grateful to have this opportunity to at least explore what my potential may be, or to help another artist, or to help another agency or whatever develop, or help nurture people that want to be an artist full time. I just think that to encourage it instead of down and play it or whatever, because you never would know. We're geniuses, didn't you know?
I love it.
We're geniuses.
Ebony, dear Ebony, tell us about the beginning of your art career. When did you start, and what were you doing?
I think the beginning of my art career, when I really started taking my art seriously, I was 11 years old and just really, really, really enjoyed my time in a room with a locked door, drawing and paint, not quite painting then, but things that I was interested in. So there was a whole lot of Disney characters. Tasmanian Devil was my favorite from it. So Taz. Shaquille O'Neal was my favorite basketball player. So there was a lot of Orlando Magic stuff. But when I remember really taking it seriously, that was the beginning point.
Yeah. For me. And I love, and you and I have spoken about sort of like the beginning and how, so I'm gonna be like, things I know about Ebony, that you loved cartooning. And then cartooning eventually, like later on, shows up in your very developed work. Like years later,
right.
That style shows up, even though it's like the style that maybe you originally started with when you were 11?
Yeah, no, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Disney cartoonist. And then I met a Disney cartoonist, and I showed him my portfolio, and he was like, this is great. Could you come up with your own characters? And I was like 13, so it was a little discouraging. I mean, unfortunately at that time I was a little bit discouraged, but also in high school I had an instructor who said, okay, no more cartoons, you've got to draw people. So I started focusing on photorealism and did that for many years until I was just in this period where it was just like, what am I contributing? I mean, yes, it takes a lot of patience. It takes a whole lot of skill to make something look like a photograph. But for me, I was just like, well, what else do I have to offer? Like, who am I as an artist? And so I kind of went back to my roots, so my more illustrative drawings and designs. So now I'm starting to marry the worlds together, so that's kind of where my style is at now. You can see like the freestyle drawing in there, but you can also see, it's not realistic, but my paintings do start to like hint at it. It's not super abstract, but it kind of blends some other abstract forms in there as well. So.
Right. Tell me about the new additions to your work and your style, because I've been watching it. We were talking about this the other day. Develop over time, and you've began to add new elements to your existing work. Can you speak about the new elements?
Sure. In the last few years, like I was telling someone earlier, the fabric I initially incorporated into my work, different textiles. I was visiting an aunt and my grandmother in Egypt. And my aunt, she has a wonderful, amazing original art collection. So she had this beautiful piece by an Egyptian artist, and he incorporated a piece of fabric, just like a couple of pieces of fabric in different places. And I was just like, And I'd already planned to do a portrait of my grandmother and I. So I asked my grandmother for one of her dresses so that I could cut up for, an art piece. And at first, so my Somali, I could tell her, hey, I want one of your dresses, and I had to really think about how to say in Somali, don't give me a nice one. Give me one, you don't mind me taking a pair of scissors and chopping up.
Right.
And so first she brings out this really beautiful piece. She was like, here,
have my
grandchild,
best.
have my beautiful dress. And I was like, no, because you are gonna be mad at me if you see me chop this up. Yeah. So I figured out how to tell her, no, I'm gonna take some scissors and cut it. And so she was like, you're not taking this. She came back and threw this this piece she didn't care about. Yeah. And I used it in the piece, and it just added a whole nother layer to the work. And so since then I've used fabric in a lot of my pieces. And so in this one, this particular fabric or textiles from Ghana. And so I still use my artistic style, so you can still see my shapes in there, you can still see all the movement, but I start out doing my shapes like my regular drawings. And then I go back in and I take tracing paper, trace it, go over the fabric to see what part of the fabric is gonna move with the piece. And then I find ways to still keep the movement going. So you see how all of these kind of lead around here, but these are all cut out pieces. And so it still goes just like with the paint all moves together. And so so that's kind of how I've started to incorporate that. And then the gold leaf, I started using maybe just about a couple years ago as well. And it's just adding more layers to it, so it's not super flat. So I love how it just adds another layer of richness to it.
Yeah. I want to jump back before we move forward. How did your grandmother feel about the fabric in the art once she saw it?
Oh, she loves it.
She loves it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandma, she loves it.
She was like, that was a good sacrifice.
Yeah.
Not too much of a sacrifice.
Yeah. No, when she saw it, she was like,
I I vouch for this.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So tell me about this piece specifically. This young boy has so much soul in his eyes. Your pieces usually they speak volumes. Their eyes always speak volumes. So I'm just curious, what is this piece about?
Okay, so this piece is titled Loud Whispers from Greenwood. And it is inspired by interviews that I did with a couple of people in particular. One is Anthony Brinkley of Tulsa, and Tony Brinkley, and Demetrius Kirk, who's also from Tulsa. And with this being the centennial year for the Tulsa Race Massacre, I thought it was important to, I don't know. I just really want to create some work this year that's based around that, to continue to highlight these stories that have been hidden for so long. So I interviewed them, and the main, some of the overlapping areas that I got from their stories when they're talking about their families, because both of them had family members that were in Tulsa at the time of the massacre. But the overlapping, some of the themes that were kind of coming up was in their stories was just this idea about this confidence that their ancestors had, this just a lot of dignity and pride, And like Demetrius described his aunt because he grew up around her. She lived in the household. So, and this is the way that they live, like everybody's at the table. And then Tony described the pride of his grandfather, who he watched being beaten by police officers, and how his grandfather refused to do some of the, like they said, call me sir, and he was like, no. And so, and it's just, this pride and dignity. And then, so I just started like thinking about, okay, what are the ancestors? What are their stories? What's the blueprint? Because basically they had what it took to have Black Wall Street.
Sure.
So what is it? What are the lessons that they have to pass down to us? And so like some of these stories, it's pride. You have to have self-pride, confidence. You have to know that anything is possible and that a Black Wall Street is possible.
Right.
And so that's why you see there's a figure here, and you can't see their faces, but there's, here's a tie, here's a man in a suit with his hand on the boy's shoulder. Here's a woman, so perhaps a grandmother or just another relative who has her hand on his shoulder there. And, basically they're giving him everything. He already has it. We already have everything that we need. And so, so that's just that reminder. The gold brick is representing like a new Greenwood. And then the clock, so this is like an old school clock, 1921, there were those pocket watches. And so it says now on the inside. So it's like, this is the future. It's like past, present, future, all in one.
Sure, yeah. I love this piece, and I think it fits perfectly within the theme of what we're talking about as far as Black resilience. And one of the things that's characteristic of when I think of African timelines and Africanness timelines, right? It's cyclical.
Yeah.
And so, or it's like, it's non-linear. So past, present, and future exist all at the same time.
Right.
And that, I feel like this painting encapsulates that perfectly.
And the African print I use in a lot of my pieces, and it's, especially important to bring that up for this one, is the idea of having pride in oneself. And so it's like that's one of the things that they're also passing down, is just this pride in who you are.
Yeah. How do you feel, so given our present, it's 2021, right? And last year was incredibly difficult, but we still had to keep going, right? As not just as Black people, but as people.
Right.
We had to be resilient. We had to keep going. And so how is that, did that impact the way you're making work in general? Like having, I guess, survived last year and now into this year? Did that change the way that you make work, or maybe not? I'm just curious.
I think for me, art is a place of refuge. So with all of what was going on, to me, my most powerful contribution is my work. And so, and it's also therapeutic. For me, like, to put feelings into a piece, it helps me to process them. And so sometimes when I'm working on a piece, I cry sometimes. It just depends on the piece. Like reading these stories about Greenwood, definitely cried. And I know you cried too.
Oh yeah.
Reading those stories.
Yeah, we're both reading this devastating book, and just,
it's just, and like all of that. And but my greatest contribution is the kind of art that I make. Like, I may not be the most outspoken verbally, but with my images and the things that I choose to paint, they speak for me, or I speak through my hands, I guess.
Yeah. Like words. So you approached me maybe sometime in June or July. It was the summer, it was hot.
Right.
And I think it's important to say that we started talking about this exhibition in the heat of protests and unrest and COVID, and you came over to my house and we were chatting outside in the driveway, and you mentioned that you had this opportunity at Myriad Gardens to show, and that you were more interested in a group show than a solo show, which I thought was incredibly generous. And I mentioned to you that one of my dreams was to create a piece inside the crystal bridges in Myriad Gardens, because for me, when we're talking about ways to escape, this is my escape. This is my escape. I occasionally come to Myriad Gardens and I go into crystal bridges, and maybe it's because I'm originally from the Caribbean, but the hot heat and the tropical plants just give me comfort, and I find peace in that space. And so I always thought, wouldn't it be beautiful to create dance where you're surrounded by something that just feels like an earth hug. Not to be a hippie, but I'm a bit of a hippie. It feels like
nothing wrong with that.
I'm a bit of a hippie. It feels like an earth hug in there. And so, and when we were based on the June-July conversation, I just felt like it was important, and I knew that I was getting ready to make pieces that were really heavy and really difficult and I'm working on a piece about the Tulsa massacre because it's important and we have to tell that story. I knew I was going to be creating really, really difficult, heavy pieces. And I knew that looking into the future, I wanted to create something that had emotional like presence, but also that had lightness, that had joy, and that had beauty. And for me, that space is an escape space. And I don't mean escape in the sense where you're escaping from all your problems, but you get to create the environment that you want, right? And so it feels like a great space, to be in right now, creating with Jamae Griffith, who's a dancer here in Oklahoma. And so her and I have been exploring what it feels to be floating in space, when that space, as in space, the cosmos, but that space is actually surrounded by greenery and plants. And then what it feels to be rooted, but rooted in a way that feels like you're connecting with the ancestors, connecting with the earth. So, just floating through space and time, I guess, and finding peace, finding joy, but also making peace with whatever is happening outside and inside. And so that's what we're exploring.
Present, future.
Past, present, future, all of it. So we're calling it We Remember, We Restore. And it's a dance film, and so we'll figure out what we're remembering and what we're restoring. We don't know yet, but it's it feels like a really positive experimentation.
And that one's it's gonna premiere on the 19th of February.
It's gonna premiere on the 19th of February.
Virtual.
We're going virtual because that's what we have right now. But it's also a way to, I'm excited about the virtual components.
No,
because
I totally am.
Yeah.
It opens it up to the world.
It's
not just, hey, if you're here, if you happen to be in this space for this hour or however long it's
Exactly.
Now it's like anybody can watch it as long as they don't get blocked for the country they're in, because that definitely happens.
Sure.
However,
I love
for the most part.
Side note, censorship.
We're hoping that everybody who wants to
will have
can
access
tune
to
in.
it.
Yeah.
And so we're creating this really beautiful interdisciplinary physical and virtual space
International Art Exhibition.
International arts for Black resilience, for Black people to express themselves freely, whether that's like dealing with the pain, or dealing with what happens after the pain.
Well, I want to say I appreciate you so much for honestly, this would not be. Honestly, it would not be. And
You made me cry.
Cry, girl, cry.
Same. I was like, there are tears.
But honestly, this would not
This
be.
wouldn't be without you.
And I just really appreciate you and all the artists, the sponsors. Like without our financial support, we wouldn't have the virtual. It would not be the same. So thanks to Oklahoma Art Council, National Endowment
for the Arts,
and Public Strategies, and Myriad Gardens for like all their support. And I thank you, Marie, for like partnering and being my comrade. And
thanks, Ebony.
And it's just so rich.
Oh, we're co-curators.
It's amazing. Co-curators. we, you know, work well together, and it's just so rich. Like, this show is so rich, and I love the dance component, love all the components.
Yes, changing frequencies, and there's surprise, it's a family piece.
Yes.
And so it just feels like that's exactly what we need right now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So if you come to Myriad Gardens, it's going to be a healing space. It's gonna be just beautiful.
You're probably not going to keep that in there.
But honestly, like, just walking in, I'm in awe.
Yeah.
Just walking in and seeing all this beautiful work, and I'm just grateful.
Yes.
Grateful.
Surrounded by expression. Black expression.
Yeah.
And we're grateful to all the artists who trust us with because I feel like every time an artist gives you their work, they're not just trusting you with their physical piece, but they're also trusting that, like, you will take care of the intention and the message, and so.
And show it in a great light.
Yeah.
And Myriad Gardens has got great light. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, we might be done.
I think it's something to
Your family.
My name is Wayne Franklin Dallas. I am 66 years old. I was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Raised primarily in Oklahoma City, but I did finish high school in Wichita, Kansas. So I spent the last 9th through the 12th grade in Kansas. So I graduated from schools in Wichita. My mother is Susan, her maiden name was Susan Smith. She was born in Purcell. Her mother was Carrie Smith, Carrie Shannon Smith, who was a school teacher. She taught in a one-room school for years in Blue Branch, Oklahoma. Eventually, when she got her master's degree from the University of Oklahoma, she started teaching in Washington, D.C. My grandfather on my mother's side, his name was Paul Franklin Smith. He was a medical doctor. Went to Meharry Medical School and was a practicing physician that had his little, they used to say horse and buggy, but he had his little Ford that he used to drive around the community seeing patients. And he was killed when my mother was around 3 years old. And there's various stories about what happened. I'd always been told he was killed in a car accident. But years later, I heard that he might have been murdered because people were jealous of his resources, that he had cars, and most of the white people in this area didn't have cars. They or did not have the education that he had, and they thought he was being uppity. But that happened years ago, so there's rumors about it. I don't know any details, don't know any truth, but I do know that he died when my mother was around 4 years old.
Do you remember how you first learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I do not remember how I first learned about it. No, I don't. I don't remember how I first learned about it. I guess I've kind of always heard about it, but I don't remember how I first.
Did you ever hear about it in school?
No, I never learned. I never was taught about it in school. No, never was.
Okay.
No.
What did you know about it or hear about it?
I just knew that there was a riot where they killed a lot of black people, and that at that time that was considered the Black Wall Street of America. In fact, from what I've heard, there was more going on in Tulsa for black people than anywhere in the country. Mm-hmm. And that was totally destroyed in just a few hours. And that the U.S. military, the police, and everybody participated in that total destruction. I think Tulsa would probably be the Atlanta of the United States. They would be Atlanta. They would represent what's going on in Atlanta, Georgia. That would be Tulsa. My father, his name was Willard Duke Dallas Sr. He was raised in Ada, Oklahoma. His father, Marcel Dallas, was a mechanic. Lucille Dallas, she ran a nursery, and she did housework for rich people, which basically means for white people. She would go in their home and cook, clean up, and do things of that nature. My father was a medical technologist for several years. Ran the lab at the hospital, University Hospital, for several years, and then got called to preach and started preaching and left the laboratory, gave up his career and started preaching the gospel, and got into education. So he did that until he died 3 years ago. And he also ran Dr. Finley's lab for him for numerous years. Dr. Finley was a prominent doctor in the black community in Oklahoma City in the early, in 1950, in 1940s. A prominent position.
Okay.
Yeah, matter of fact, I think he owned the land that they built the Aloft Hotel on. He had a bill office. The Finley building was over there.
Oh, wow.
And my dad ran his lab for numerous years. My mother and father had different upbringings, but different upbringings, and both of them attended Langston University. My wife, she's a Langston University graduate and received her master's degree from Oklahoma State University. I attended Kansas State University and received my master's degree from the University of Oklahoma. We've got 4 children. All 4 of them have received bachelor's degrees from various universities, and 4 of them have, 3 of them have also received master's degrees. So, well, I've been blessed with a family that it was ingrained in us that education was important, and I'm just grateful to see that they all pursued education. Home means to me, I say I guess the reason if I had to say at a black Oklahoman, the reason I would say Oklahoma is important is because that's where the people are, that I have strong relationships. Home is more grounded to me in relationships than it is in property or in land. It's the relationships that make home. That's why I have a hard time. I hear folk talking about they're going to retire and move to Florida and just relax. And man, I'm thinking, man, what you gonna move to Florida? Ain't nobody in Florida, you know. That could never be home. Mm-hmm. Because there are no relationships in Florida. Home would be where the people I grew up with, the people that I go to church with, the people that I worship with, where family is. That's where home is, where my relationships are. It's they say Oklahoma is the heart of the country, but I believe religiously, Oklahoma has made a major role in teaching the country and keeping the country honest about the truth about who Jesus Christ is.
My name is Anthony C. Brinkley. I'm a spoken word artist known as Tulsa Tony B around here in Tulsa. My age, I'm 67 years old. My mother, who was born in 35, was born here in Tulsa.
Okay.
So I don't know what year my grandparents came here together. And I don't know how they met or anything. You know,
Okay.
they're both deceased now, so
Okay.
I don't know that.
Yeah. That's interesting. A lot of black folks came around.
Yeah, there's a lot of come to Oklahoma. So when they first opened up Oklahoma, when lots of people came here, blacks fleeing slavery, coming back from other places, they came to Oklahoma because there was land here. And there were so many of them that came that Oklahoma boasted more all-black towns than any other state in the United States. And it came close to becoming a black state. There was a legislation introduced by a Kansas senator to make Oklahoma a black state. That failed. And then when Oklahoma became a state, you know, the very first legislation passed was reinforcing segregation. Home. This is where most of my family is. You know, we're spread out. A lot of us from California to Florida to Texas, but the majority of them, this is home base. I've only, you know, when I was in the military, I traveled around, and then I stayed in Sacramento for a couple of years after I got out. But this is where I've lived most of my life.
How did you first learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre?
You know, I really can't say. I think I may have heard them talking about it in the news or something, but I was an adult when I first heard about Black Wall Street and the race massacre. I'm like, what? What? When did this happen? You know, I guess it was so suppressed. You know, I told you that I think white people didn't want to talk about it because it was a stain on the goodness of white Tulsa, right? And black people didn't want to talk about it because it was a reminder how truly helpless we are and how we could not prevent their onslaught. If they wanted to assault us, we couldn't do anything about it, really. So neither side, it was like whistling past danger, and neither side wanted to talk about it, really. And I don't know when it started being talked about.
Wow. So not in schools or anything?
No, never. Not a mention of it in school.
Wow. So I guess your family never discussed it either.
Nope. I don't even know that my family knew about it. Well, I'm sure my grandparents did, but I don't know that my mother knew about it. You know, like 20 years after it, I'm sure nobody spoke about it.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard some of the stories told by people who grandparents told them when they were kids about hiding and not knowing what was going on and running and how afraid they were. But that's about it. As little kids, we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. It was a different world. It was a time when nobody locked their doors, that people didn't move around. You knew all the people around the neighborhoods. Mrs. Johnson down the street knew who you were. Mr. Jackson around the corner knew who you were. Everybody knew who you were, and everybody could chastise you. Everybody could get on you for doing wrong. And you didn't want to go tell your parents that Mr. Jackson said so, because you get it from them too. So it was a different era. And back then, we didn't know about segregation with the kids. We all knew. We went to the Rex Theater, and we all thought it was the only theater in town. We didn't know it was the only one blacks could go to. there was a little amusement park near the Mohawk area called Bell Scott. Same thing. It was the only one that we could go to. So there, but you know, it was always reinforced. I remember I was maybe 12 years old, and my grandfather's second job was working as a night janitor in an office building in the south side of Florida. You know, blacks were on the north side of town, whites were on the south side of town. And we were coming from there one night, and police pulled him over. I don't know why. He wasn't speeding. He wasn't doing anything. I guess, I don't know. But anyway, when things got loud, I got out of the car, and I heard them trying to scream at him and tell him he better answer them with sir. And he didn't. And, you know, he has always been kind of defiant. And so they started hitting him with their sticks. And when he went down, they kept hitting him. I remember that. I remember praying, please, God, make them stop. And when they did, I ran to him, hoping he was still alive. I remember one of the cops, they sauntered back to the cars. One of them turned, smirked, and blew me a kiss. But back then, there was nothing we could do about it. There were no complaints filed. We just, that's what they did.
Demetrius Kirk. I am 41 years old, born and raised in Tulsa, currently residing in Ebony, Oklahoma. Family, I got, you know, most of my parents and a lot of cousins and relatives live out there. And so, you know, it's home. It's home. Tulsa, like I can remember, like I'm 41, so I can remember Tulsa before like the crack epidemic, and it was still kind of more of a family, tribe-like type of place where everybody kind of looked out for each other type of deal. It was segregated still in the sense that like most of the people I grew up and around were black people. I didn't know any white folks. None lived around me, didn't go to school with any white people. So it was still kind of segregated in the sense that, you know, I grew up around nothing but black people. And, you know, like neighborhoods were nice back then, but, you know, as the crack age started coming in, you start seeing things and the neighborhoods start going down. And yeah, it just kept getting worse and worse, and it's still getting, unfortunately, it's still getting worse.
Wow. So, you said it was really, really segregated. How did you first learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre, and do you feel that has anything to do with how segregated the neighborhoods were?
Absolutely. So my great aunt lived with us. She was born in 1903, and so she was alive during the 1921 race riot. She lived in Tulsa, and so when I was maybe in elementary school, she told me about it. And, you know, I was a kid, and you store that information, but I was too young to really grasp what it was, type of thing. But it's something that I never heard about in the classroom setting until I went to college, and I went to Langston University. So I would, like, if I probably went to a school that wasn't a HBCU, I probably would have never heard about it.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it was, but, you know, I had, like my aunt, she told me about what Tulsa was before, and kind of even like afterwards, they still, you know, had a lot of people left, but they still had a lot of black-owned businesses. But it was nothing like it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did she describe it, like before?
Just real affluent, classy, like my aunt. Like, we grew up like setting the table with silverware and had to be a certain place, and you had to conduct yourself in a certain way at the dinner table. We ate at the dinner table every day. And that was a result of just how they lived back then. It was just a real classy type of vibe and atmosphere. And that, you know, my aunt was definitely a classy lady. And so, and that's what it was back then. You know, a lot of people dressed up, had, for the time, nice, you know, automobiles, or how they got around, just nice, they just had nice things. I know that she was very prominent in her church, Vernon AME Church in Tulsa. It's a well-known old school church, and it's right around the Greenwood area, actually. Yeah, so yeah, she was there all the way up until she was unable to go to church.
Oh wow! So was it ever burned down? Because I know some of the churches were burned down and then rebuilt.
I'm pretty sure that was it was rebuilt.
Okay.
Yeah, because everything was destroyed.
So did she ever tell you what she remembered seeing? Like, was she physically in Tulsa at the time that it happened?
Yeah. So she lived in Tulsa,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, she just told me that they came, the government and white folks that lived there came and burned everything down. You know, so it, like, she explained it to me. You know, like I said, I was a child. You know, and you know, she passed. I was in the 7th grade, but you know, it's something that she felt that was important for me to know as a young man, as a young child. So she talked about it a few times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so, you know, she told me that it was, you know, real nice, fluid, nice business. They had everything from dentistry, doctors, any kind of business. They had movie theaters. They had everything. They had everything that you would need in there.
So you mentioned, like, you did learn about it once you got to college. What do you remember about that conversation? Like, what they said about it?
It was a progressive professor, and he kind of went off script a lot of times. Talked about a lot of controversial things that a lot of students didn't vibe with because it didn't fit the narrative of what they thought history or life should be like or whatever. So he challenged us to think outside of how people traditionally think. And he brought up the Tulsa race riots, and like the classroom was kind of like, what? Like, you know, which is what a lot of people up until recently would say, like, when I would bring it up, because, you know, it's something that's stuck with me. And, you know, of course, I was like, oh, yeah, I knew about that. You know, my aunt was there, and she told me X, Y, and Z. So, you know, I tried to, you know, let people know about it, if even people who lived in Tulsa, you know, don't have a clue what went on.
Why do you think that is?
I don't think that it's one of those things that people don't want to know, like the history books and the people that make the curriculums, and they don't want that kind of information to be out. And, you know, there's people were massacred. You know, black folks were massacred. All their buildings were burned down, their homes, and it was the citizens of Tulsa and the government had a hand in it. So, you know, it's not something that, things like that, people try to sweep under the rug.
Yeah. What about, like, within the black community, like, why it wasn't discussed more?
Yeah, I think the older people have been through so much, you know, so many you know, acts of racism and so much. They been beat down so much. You know, my dad was drug out of a restaurant, you know, in Tulsa when, you know, he was black and he couldn't be in a certain place, you know, a white restaurant or whatever. And so those type of things, you know, for community aspect, we've been through a lot of stuff, and it's kind of like some people might just view it as that's just another thing that happened to us that keeps happening to us. You know, and it's, as you know, it's instances of things happen of us just because of what we look like still to this day. So I think we conditioned for pain and misfortune, and it's like, it's just kind of what it is.
Where do you believe Tulsa would be had the massacre not occurred?
It would be just as big or bigger than what people perceive, like, or think of when they think of, like Harlem. You know, Tulsa was that before that. And like Atlanta, DC, all of these places where people believe, you know, it's a lot of affluent black people in these cities, a lot of black people doing really well for themselves. You see black businesses and you see black people in high positions and positions of power in the community. I think that if that massacre wouldn't took place and they wouldn't burn down Black Wall Street, then Tulsa would have been that. It would have been that, because it was that before all of these other places were. So yeah, it would be bigger than all of those things. So my biggest influence in life, just as a man, is my father. He's the strongest man I know, just wise, and he was like such a figure when, you know, in his younger years. Even now, you know, he's older. He's in his mid-70s, but even now he still carries himself a certain way. And he was like the neighborhood father. He was everybody's daddy. And so he had the biggest impact on me as a man. But as far as what got me interested in the profession, it was I was a kid, and was a black officer named Marvin Blades. And he used to come to the schools, and he was a real strong bodybuilder type guy who was into martial arts. And he used to come put on these presentations and things, and like break bricks and break boards and stuff. And I just thought that that was like the coolest thing on earth, you know. And I was just like, as a kid, you see this guy with the uniform on, and he's breaking stuff, like, you know, he's got 4 or 5 bricks, and he's like punching the hole like all the way through it. And I was just like, man, I want to do that, you know. As a kid, I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so that just kind of stuck with me, like, all right, this is what I want to do. And then as I got older, I got more into my community and just trying to, I know that we have a lot of issues in our community with law enforcement and how people perceive it to be or what it is. And so I wanted to change that, you know. And it's like, if you want something to change, you have to be that change. You know, a lot of people can, you know, sit on the sidelines and point and say, well, this should be different, this should be different, this should be different. And I've always been the type of person, like, I'm here to fix it, you know. So, well, I want to go in, I want to make a difference, and this is what I want to do. So it's a lot of, like, I have a passion for my job and helping people. I have a passion for community. I have a youth boxing organization. You know, although boxing is a main component of it. Also, we do tutoring and mentoring, and we have life skills group. And so it's really how I grew up, which was a village type of system. I have a lot of coaches, a lot of trainers, and myself. It's more of a village thing. We were all in this thing together, and so we're all invested in these kids. And so making a difference in my community is why I get up every day and do what I do. And I have a passion for it. So that's why